Hi, I'm Jeremy Paden, and I will be reading three poems from a forthcoming manuscript titled Self-Portrait as an Iguana. The collection itself co-won the first Poeta Nueva York Prize, which was put out by Valparaíso Editions, a press from Granada, Spain. The prize itself was for poets residing in the United States of America, but who write in Spanish. So these three poems were originally written in Spanish, but I've translated them into English because the collection itself is going to come out as a bilingual collection. This first poem came to mind because, well, in the age of COVID, we've all been doing many more dishes. Self-portrait as a husband doing the dishes. Dressed, barely, if underwear, t-shirt with sweat and deodorant stains in the pits, and socks with holes where his big toes poke out counts as being dressed. It's 5 a.m, and he stands by the sink, up to his elbows in soap and water, washing the dishes from last night's party. Politics play no role. It's not a peace offering, not a gesture of thanks for a night spent making love. 3 months ago, the dishwasher broke, and he hasn't yet taken the time to call the repairman. This next poem is one of the three poems that share a title with the manuscript itself, and it's about Fernández de Oviedo and his iguanas. Fernández de Oviedo was the first European to write a natural history of the Americas. And though he knew what iguanas ate when he wrote about them in 1526, 20 years later, when he sent a specimen off to a friend of his in Italy, he didn't send it with what it ate. His cultural memory got in the way and messed things up. And so this is a poem, it's a poem about that. It's a poem about how our biases keep us from seeing the world. Self-portrait as an iguana, 2. Fernández de Oviedo will write of me, there are no better or sweeter meats than its flesh. It's a feast fit for Easter and Lenten Fridays. He will know of my love for tender leaves, cassava bread. But I am iguana, iguana, a riddle. I live in trees, swim in the sea. When he sends me to Ramusio as an Indian marvel, he will provision me with a cask of the best mud from Osama River. I am a serpent with legs, a dragon without poison. I am enigma, enigma. I will arrive in Seville, turn skeleton, turn to dust, turn to nothing. The last poem is a poem about my childhood. We lived in Nicaragua in the early 80s, right at the beginning of the Sandinista attempt to reform Nicaragua and make it something other than what it had been for most of the 20th century, namely a small country ruled by dictators sponsored by the United States of America. And while everything was new, everything was magical. And this is a poem about the house where we lived. It's called House with a Mango Out Back. Once there was a house on a dead-end street with a mango out back, never without flower and always with fruit. If you know anything about mangoes, you'll tell me to stop with these magical tales from the end of last century, lies told by people who can't handle the truth. On the corner of that cul-de-sac lived a baker who made donuts. These were years of ration and revolution. Still she found the flour and the sugar, the cinnamon and the oil, and some mornings we rustled up the change to buy her buns, hot and freshly sugared. If I tell you that in the roof of that house lived an iguana fat from eating so many mangoes, you'll still not believe me. But it sunned itself on the wall under the tree every morning, and the neighbors, maybe this will convince you, wanted desperately to catch it for a soup. Every afternoon in that house we ate green mango with salt, chili, and limes. I don't care if you still don't believe me. But once there was a house on a dead-end street with a mango out back that set its buds when the last mangoes of the previous fruiting were still green and hard as almonds. And every night a mischief of rats would descend upon the house, while the mother would scream and jump on the waterbed as the father would chase them with a bat, though the coup de grace never fell. Night after night, the rats and the bat through the house. And one night the father slipped and slammed into the door, and woke the swarm of termites and cockroaches that lived in the wood and spilled out like a river, as if inside the door slept the angel with the cup of plagues. No, I'm not here to tell you fairy tales. Once there was a house on a dead-end street where an iguana lived in a paradise of mangoes. Thank you.